Welcome to the Eminence Legacy podcast, your ultimate destination for self-help, self-development, and inspirational stories. We are on a mission here to guide you on a transformative journey. In each episode, we'll dive into powerful insights, practical tips, and moving stories that will inspire and empower you to rise to your eminence. Join us as we unlock the secrets to personal growth, overcome challenges, and build the legacy you've always dreamed of. Get ready to elevate your life and reach new heights with the Eminence Legacy podcast. Let's rise to our eminence together.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the Eminence Legacy podcast. My name is Alfonso Cadena, and I'm joined here today by my co-host,
Jose Luis Cadena, and thank you for joining us.
And we're joining you here today from South Texas. So there's been a lot of news coming out of South Texas recently. Did you hear about the shark attacks that happened in South Padre Island?
Yes, I did.
So there was about the last report that I saw was that there was 4 of them. They assembled the whole Coast Guard there, so it's a really popular spot for vacationing. It's a nice area, but given the situation, I'm not so sure if I'll get in the beach in this period of time. Yeah, I have some relatives that are actually planning a trip over there. But man, all of this has it's been crazy. We're also expecting a hurricane that might come with 90 miles an hour, but we just never really know, right? Because by the time it hits the shore, it weakens. But yeah, we've had several scares like that, but it always turns out to be nothing. So it should be interesting. But what's happens?
Well, whether it's nothing or something, it still keeps you on edge because you don't know what really to expect.
Better to be prepared.
Yeah, better be safe than sorry.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it actually ties into our topic today because we're actually talking about procrastination. Now, given that it's summer, there's a lot of people right now that are probably planning their trip last minute. It's like, oh, we're not going to go anywhere this summer. Then August is already approaching, and then you decide, you know what, I do need to go somewhere this summer. Otherwise, my family and I are going to go crazy. So, yeah, this one's for you, everybody that's planning to those last minute trips. We're going to try to give you some tips on how you can prevent procrastinating in the future, given that it's something that all of us are going to go through, and we're going to need these tools at some given time.
When I was researching for this topic, I came across a lot of websites like Solving Procrastination, Proactive Lab, and then there's actually a book that I think Cyros, PhD, she wrote a book on it. But it was showing that studies show that about 20% of adults procrastinate chronically. And then 50 of the college students procrastinate in consistent and more chronic manner. 75 consider themselves to be procrastinators. And 80 to 95 of the college students procrastinate. So those are very high numbers.
You know what's interesting about that survey? I do wonder if when they sent out the surveys, if really the questions didn't really matter. What mattered was, okay, this is due by the end of the week. Let's see how many of you can actually get it turned in by Friday and how many of you actually get it turned in 2 weeks from now. Maybe that's how they got the results. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to look at the methodology that they use.
Yeah, that is true because it doesn't really break down how they come about the survey. But one of the things is to consider procrastination is not necessarily being lazy. A lot of times it's about your emotions and how you're relating to your emotions. So sometimes we have to kind of regulate our emotions in order to prevent procrastinating, because when you procrastinate, those are more about the symptoms of what we're probably going through.
Right, because procrastination, since you're making the contrast between that and laziness, yeah, because laziness is something at that point you're not interested. I mean, the very fact that you're procrastinating is because you're aware that something needs to get done. You're just choosing not to. So it's an active decision that you do versus like laziness where, where you're just apathetic towards it. You're inactive, you're just unwilling. And when somebody's in that point, they're just really unlikely to get started at all. Versus a procrastinator is like you said, it's an emotional um, reaction to something that we're expecting for it to be either unpleasant or boring, and we just think, all right, now I'll get to it. But I know it needs to get done. So it's like you mentioned, it's not inherently tied to laziness. It's just that we're already making that leap into assuming that it's going to be a boring, unproductive, or maybe unproductive is not the right word, but it's going to be a boring and unpleasant task that you're trying to avoid or delay.
Exactly, and that's what I kind of relate to it, because a lot of times it's the association I have with the task, and I'm like, nah, I don't think I really want to do it because I'm not going to enjoy it, and it gets me out of my comfort zone. So a lot of times it's more about a mental state.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the tips that we can use so that we can try to um, prevent some of it. Because like you said, I mean, those numbers that you talked about, I mean, there's just so many of us that have done it. And I'm pretty sure that the people that answered that, oh no, I'm not a procrastinator, I'm sure they procrastinated with something or another. Because like the truth of the matter is, all of us are going to have those things that we don't enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So let's go ahead and talk about some of them. The first one that I found that was actually really useful is start small. Right. So you don't, we're not talking about like, okay, devote all of this day to accomplishing that one task. So it's like, not at all. You can actually start small, and some progress is better than no progress, right?
Yeah, always.
Yep. So yeah, guys, so go ahead and start small. You don't have to go ahead and take on the full project to get it done in a single day. You can just go ahead and start with a single step. It could even be something as simple as like, you know what? Let me go ahead and set these tools where I can see them, so that tomorrow when I get started, I won't make it as an excuse. Oh, I still need to dig into the storage room and take out the tools. It's like, no, guess what? Step one is already done.
Yeah, it's always good to have like a game plan to be able to um, take on that task that you probably are not looking forward to, but more than likely we're capable of doing it.
Right. Yeah, because it all comes back to what you're saying, that you do have to make a plan for it. And by taking that small step to get started, it's part of that bigger plan that ultimately you're going to end up following through. And one of the things that I think a lot of us are guilty of too is starting so many smaller things, that we finish nothing at all. Another thing that we could probably focus on working is, rather than like starting on multiple tasks, just focus on finishing one, right? And then from there, you start creating a snowball effect to where you can go ahead and start knocking off stuff off your list that you've been intending to finish, but you don't, because we have a habit of just getting started on things and not seeing them finish through.
There's reminds me of the topic that we spoke about, the one thing. Just focus on that one thing that we need to take care of, and I guess do a little bit at a time and work through the process to be able to finish. And one of the things about I guess I want to comment about procrastination, that's an immediate reinforcement as a way of us getting rewarded. To basically, it can easily make it a bad habit for us to do it, because it creates a temporary relief when we procrastinate, but eventually we're gonna have to get to it.
Right. Yeah. There's actually like a meme that reminds me of that, because there's a guy, just sitting in the cartoon, he's sitting and smiling in his couch watching the television, and there's just this monster like right behind him that's crouching on his back, and and the monster is labeled responsibilities, and that's really the way that your day's gonna move on, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going to, you think you're enjoying yourself, but in reality, in the back of your mind, you're still thinking, I still need to get this thing done, and I'm eventually gonna have to face the music. And there's some things that are just time sensitive. Like if there's if you got a leaky roof, every day every day that passes by is going to be is going to be like a more damage and more costly in the end. I actually had a similar experience recently where I saw that there was like some ants like inside of one of my walls. I'm like, man, I remember I remember fumigating for for termites like a couple of years ago. I mean, they told me that was going to last so long. I don't remember the amount of years, but I knew that it was still within that frame. And I'm like, and I'm already having this. My concern was that there were carpenter ants, which apparently are different. You know, so that and they're they're almost like the distant cousin of like termites. And I could think about several reasons why I delayed on making the call for fumigation. One is like I was worried about the cost, which is silly because I mean, like we talk about, some procrastination like that could end up becoming more costly. And the other thing is like again, just having to wait on this technician to show up. But guess what? Like he ended up showing up, and I realized they're just regular ants. So that thing that I could have probably done a week sooner, it turns out to just be regular ants. And, it's anecdotal to it, but I think it's representative of what a lot of us go through.
And I think that sometimes the anticipation about it makes it overwhelming, which makes us procrastinate or allows us to procrastinate. And one thing about the consequences that you mentioned, procrastination doesn't only affect your goals, your success, how much money you make, or your productivity, but in the long term, it actually also has been known to affect your health. It's been known when there's a constant procrastinator, there are higher rates of depression, stress, anxiety, and can even lead to immune system deficiencies because of all that stress you're feeling. Eventually, it's going to come down on your body in a physical manner. Now, think about this too. Procrastination equals poor health behaviors. Usually, when you're sitting down, doing nothing, or just you're probably doing something very unproductive, maybe sitting down, eating chips, or maybe you're just wasting time scrolling to a phone. Everybody has their different ways of procrastinating. There's not one single thing that anybody's doing because everybody finds a way to I guess procrastinate.
Yeah, definitely. And just expanding on that example that you provided, it's very accurate because you say it's like, you know what, I'll just go to the gym tomorrow, you know, and that tomorrow ends up becoming the next day, before you know it, it's like, let's say like you still have time on Friday, and the first thing you're going to tell yourself is, well, I already missed the rest of the week. Why go today, right?
Yeah,
Because we're
definitely.
one of the things that we're so good at is always finding excuses for ourselves or finding ways to justify our behavior. So if you give the possibility for that, you'll find that like in the end, had you just like maybe you don't do the full workout, and that's something I have to be comfortable with. Like if I didn't get a good night's sleep, it's like, you know what, like instead of going for the full hour, I'm just gonna do enough just to stay, like active. And I've given myself that freedom to be able to give myself that time to recover, but at the same time still hit my goal of trying to be more active. Because I understand that like for most of us, we have very sedentary jobs that if we don't make that effort, it's going to cause us to have more long-term effects negatively in our health. And it's one thing I know we're not really talking about health per se, but it's something that I've been hearing over and over again recently. And I guess part of it is because, when you go to, like in our church, like there's a lot of young people, but there's also older people. And one of the things that you'll hear like older generations say is they'll say things like, well, somebody that takes care of themselves is still sometimes dies young. So what's the point of doing it at all if none of us really know when our day is going to come? And my response to that has always been, it's like, okay, what is the quality of life that you want to live? Do you want to live a life, where you're not gonna be able to play with your grandkids, where you're not going to be able to go you're not going to be able to travel because you can't handle like long walks. You can't get off a dock into a boat. If that's how you choose to live your life, one that where you're restricted by your own body, then that's your decision. But for some of us, like we're not thinking about the longevity, but we're thinking about the quality. And I think it goes back to what you're talking about, that we're not so much, that if we're going to be procrastinating, it's so momentary, like the pleasure that you're going to get out of it, that if you were
Yeah.
just to deal with it, you realize that you're actually like your anxiety levels, your stress, and so many other negative effects is just going to be down significantly because you're not letting these things pile up. Because that's the other thing too, that thing like life doesn't wait for anyone. And what it maybe was just a single thing in your agenda, it becomes two, it becomes three, and before you know it, you have a whole like list of things that you need to work on.
And something as simple as bedtime procrastination. I think everybody's guilty for that. That you have to go to sleep, you have to wake up early tomorrow, and you end up doing something else, get entertained, and again, you see the trickle effect in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was actually I think I shared it on this. I think I shared it on this podcast, but I was having trouble with sleep for like 4 weeks at a time. Maybe it was even longer at that point. That you just lose track of time when that's going on. Coincidentally, during that time, the Huberman podcast released like some episodes that were talking about sleep, and yeah, that's actually one of the things that he brought up. Like if the first thing that you're going to do when you wake up in the morning is going to be look at your phone, then your body's going to be anticipating that dopamine rush that you're going to give it every time you wake up. So guess what? As soon as you go to sleep, your body's already anxious to wake up to get that hit of dopamine. But yeah, and that actually hits to one of the points that we wanted to talk about here too, when it comes to procrastination. How we're creating our environment. Like, are we freeing it from the distractions that are going to be delaying us from getting to it? Meaning, if you know that your phone is going to be is going to be a distractor from you to achieving what you want to accomplish, then maybe it's going to be best to just set the phone aside for now, turn off the notifications, and prevent that distraction. Because let's face it, that's going to be one of the biggest distractors that we have. Every free moment that we have, that's going to be our reaction our first reaction is going to be to look at our phones.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so you want to see what it is that you can change about your environment so that you can make your day more productive and being able to stop this trend of procrastinating. So I think another thing that I also stood out to me is the way that we phrase things to ourselves. So if we say things like "I need to," "I have to," right? It goes back to what you were saying earlier, that we it's a perception that we have of the task that as something negative, something that we're forced to do. And when we're told to do something, like it's we react differently to it, right? So like, I mean, recently I was watching a video where this kid was taking out the trash, and he's out there and he's ranting, because everybody has like their security cameras out there. So the kid is being recorded as he's out there taking out the trash, and he's saying, "My parents told me that I have to take out the garbage, and I'm so upset. Had they not told me, I was gonna do it anyway. Why did they have to tell me? Now I have to be upset because they're the ones that told me that I have to take out the trash when I was already gonna do it to begin with." So we just react differently when we're told to do something, and it's no different when we tell that dialogue to ourselves, meaning that if you're telling yourself, "I need to," "I have to," versus if you say something like around the lines that I can't, like, "I choose to," it's your choice to do it, then it's going to, I don't feel maybe I don't feel like doing it right now, but I'm choosing to do it. So like if you change that verbiage, it's going to change the framework through which you're seeing the task. Not something that you're being forced to do, but something that you're choosing to do.
Yeah, the outlook of things, you actually change the perception, and it makes it easier for you to go through it. Makes sense.
Another thing that I also found it really interesting about this topic too is that, like, we we are in the age of information, meaning that, like, it's so accessible to us because of the internet. But even then, it seems like, I mean, for some things we know less than other generations about certain things, and a lot of times we let that intimidation of not knowing stop us from doing what we need to do. So one thing that I found that was actually really helpful is the 70% rule. Have you heard of that? Had you heard of that one before researching for this topic?
Yes, I've heard about it.
Yeah, so it's great, man, because, like, I mean, we often get intimidated by trying something new or by getting started on something because we think we're missing information. But guess what? All you need is 70% um, of knowing of what it is that you're going to do to actually get started, meaning that you don't need to know the full 100%. So if you at least know 70% of whatever it is that you're engaging, you already have enough to make rational and productive decisions that are going to be that are going to bring a more positive outcome than not.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So, anything else that you want to add?
Well, I guess just to remind everybody that procrastination is not a character flaw, but it's actually it's I'm trying to think this through, but it's a common challenge that can be managed with the right mindset and the right tools, and that's why we're bringing this to your attention, because by focusing on your emotional regulation, we can address the root of the cause of our procrastination. We need to kind of zone in and focus on what we're really trying to aim at and what we're trying to I guess overcome, and know that a lot of people struggle with this. I mean, the numbers here, especially in the US, because I know that in other places the numbers are different, like other countries, because they actually make it a mission in every, I guess, country to actually look at this. And I found out through the little research that we were doing for this podcast. Interesting to know that in the US is very common, and we need to kind of try to work through this, and eventually we'll get it right.
Right, yeah, because this is something that is only going to come through self-awareness. It's not something that, like if I guess if it's really chronic, then you might are gonna have that good friend that's gonna bring it up to you. It's like, hey man, you have a tendency of doing this. You make the situation worse for you because you leave it towards the end. But for most of us, it's gonna be, it's gonna be a time when we reflect on ourselves and we have to realize if it's a pattern of behavior that we're doing because like a lot of times like if you're single it's like you get to get away with a lot more of it so if you want to improve yourself, it's something that you're going to have to observe in your own self, and you're gonna want to improve. Then you're going to be using tools like this to be able to make it better. All right, everyone, and that concludes this week's episode. If you guys want more information, including a blog or coaching sessions, you can go to www.eminencelegacylive.com. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and uh, have a great week, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to rise to your eminence. Have a great week.